Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. This is the first in a short series of updates, transportation updates in various geographic areas of the region. This one focuses on the Northwest Valley. And the area begins at the interchange of Loop 303 and Grand Avenue, US 60, and goes north and west of that point. This is an area that didn't have much population back in 2010, less than 5,000 people. But since then, things have started growing. And as of around 2020, there was a big change in the rate of that growth, averaging about 7,000 people a year, which is already underway and will last until 2040. And by 2050, we'll be only a year or two away from having 250,000 people in this area. To get a sense of what this looks like, we have these dot diagrams. Each dot is 15 people. So 100 dots is 1,500 people, 1,000 dots is 15,000 people. And what we see is between 2010 and 2020, there was a little bit of growth, but by 2030, it's a lot more. And by the time we get to 2050, we have an area that's dense in density, is very much like the area that you see around the 101 at the south, the bottom right-hand area of this. Now, needless to say, that creates some traffic congestion, and we have some serious congestion at the intersection of Grand Avenue with 163rd Avenue and the interchange itself. Here are some numbers to show how bad that congestion was around the middle of 2023, with almost 10 minutes to get on 163rd Avenue to make the left turn onto Grand Avenue, and another 2.5 minutes to get on the freeway. So that's a 12-minute trip to make that short distance. We can visualize what that looks like. Here we're looking straight north from the interchange. So you see Grand Avenue going diagonally to the left, and you can see how long the queue is here. That goes up to the 163rd Avenue interchange, and you can see there's a queue just as long going up 136th Avenue as well. And here's another view. This is actually taken at a time when there isn't a lot of traffic, but we still have a long queue. And the reason for that long queue is that a train went by, because we have an at-grade train crossing at 163rd Avenue. So you can imagine if it's rush hour and a mile-long train comes by, you get a double whammy, which really affects people. Needless to say, the public is involved in this. They've been activated. They're demanding some quick response, and ADOT has been able to respond to that. What we're looking at is the intersection of 163rd Avenue and Grand Avenue. The light gray lines that you see show some of the lanes that are available and where improvements can be made. These improvements were made using striping, as you had referenced earlier, to get an additional through lane westbound on Grand Avenue and additional right turn lane. There are other improvements that require providing more pavement. These improvements are in the tender process right now with ADOT, but that will give a third left turn lane from 163rd Avenue and a continuous 3 lanes on eastbound Grand Avenue. At the freeway itself, there is the possibility of restriping to change the right turn lane to a left turn lane, but you can't do that until you can replace the right turn lane. That requires more pavement and a widening of the ramp. And again, that's in the tender process right now. So let's see how these improvements will help. On the left, what you see are the same numbers you saw earlier with the 9.8 minutes of delay on 163rd Avenue. With these improvements, that delay gets a lot better. At the freeway itself, the improvement isn't as great. But the interesting thing is by 2030, which is a little more than 5 years from today, things get even worse than they were in 2023. And now that trip from 163rd Avenue to the freeway will take 15 minutes, even with the improvements that are underway right now. So we know that there are going to be a need for more improvements given the rate of growth that we have. Now, let's look at why this area is being hit so hard. What you're looking at here is where we have freeways on the 303. You can see at the bottom, we have the interchange with Grand Avenue. Then we have one at El Mirage, but that one doesn't serve the north. It only has the road going to the south. And then there are 3 very closely spaced interchanges at that point going to the north and the east. So that tells us that the eastern portion of this area has really good access to the 303 freeway. That will get better with the extension of El Mirage Road, which is currently in design, which will provide even more access to that area. But what about the people who are west of that black arrow? What options do they have? They really have only one option, and that's to go to the interchange with the 303 along Grand Avenue. And it's not just for people getting on the freeway. It's for anyone who wants to get in the central portion of the region. This is the only way they have to get there. So this is why the congestion is so great and why there's a need to do something. We do have projects underway. I've already mentioned the near-term improvements, which are in tender at the moment. The El Mirage Road extension, which provide access in the eastern portion. But there's also a new interchange that's being studied, which will be somewhere between Grand Avenue and El Mirage. We don't know exactly where that will be yet, but there is a scoping study that has just begun, and that study will make a decision. We also have a number of improvements that come through the Prop 479 investment plan, and they include much longer term improvements of the interchange, a great separation at 163rd Avenue. There's a widening of 163rd as well. Joe Max Road is being extended. That will improve access to the El Mirage Road interchange. We also have a couple of ongoing corridor studies here at MAG. One of those is on Route 74, which goes from I-17 to Grand Avenue. That study is underway, looking at both mainline improvements and improvements to the key intersections. The other study is for State Route 60, Grand Avenue, from Loop 303 to State Route 74. This one has a large study area. You can see here the blue outline on the right side is the study area. It goes quite a distance away from Grand Avenue. The reason for that is that there's not a lot of road infrastructure in this area. And with all of this population growth, there needs to be an arterial system program that is going to provide those roads and they will include accessing Grand Avenue. As we're planning to make improvements to Grand Avenue, we need to be sure that there are plans in place for the arterial streets, so they're providing the access, and we have good timing and can synchronize the times when these improvements are made both on Grand Avenue and the arterial streets. This process is also underway. This project began in March. And just a couple of additional points. One is at the northern part of the corridor. You can see in the orange crosshatched area, that's the new railroad intermodal facility that BNSF wants to build. And at the southern end, we have a lot of warehousing that's being built. They're opening up, it seems, every day. That tells us there's going to be a huge increase in truck traffic along this corridor. So we need to prepare for that. We have a canal that goes through, and that's going to require costly bridges to get across the canal. Luke Air Force Base has an auxiliary area in the southwestern portion of the study area. That's going to be an impediment for building roads and even for residential and other development. So we have some key takeaways from this. A lot of words on this slide. I'm sorry for that, but let's go through them quickly. The growth has resulted in severe congestion, and we've seen that. The near-term improvements help, but are not the full solution. We need more. And there are improvements in the 479 investment plan to do that. The new interchange will need to be located and then designed so that it can provide access to the arterial system throughout the whole study area. And then finally, the Grand Avenue corridor study will be looking at both arterials and the Route 60 to find a plan to see these develop in synchronization with each other. And that study is a collaborative effort of MAG, ADOT, the affected jurisdictions, and other key stakeholders. So, Mr. Chairman, that concludes my update.
And Mr. Chair, if I could just add a couple things. One, I want to thank Mayor Hall and his city manager, Bob Wingenroth, because they saw this coming and they got a hold of us early. And then John Bullen was able to get in a room with the ADOT engineers, Bob and his staff from Surprise. They rolled up their sleeves and they came up with some of these paint on the pavement interim solutions that have given a lot of relief. And actually, we probably should let Mayor Hall make this whole presentation because he's lived it moment to moment. But it's a good illustration of where you and your communities are experiencing what feel like, insurmountable transportation problems. We are able to bring some resources in a short term to deal with that. So again, I speak highly of what happened with the city of Surprise. They reached out, they invited us to a public meeting. We were able to help give some assurance, I think, to the residents that were coming and talking. But of course, we all know that the ultimate solution to this is 3 numbers, 479. That's where the long-term solution comes for this. And I think in the next couple of months, you've asked us to go through kind of around the valley with different areas that are like this. And we'll see the same, you're going to hear the same theme, which is there's some things we can do in the short term with our resources we have now. But after 2025, the resources have to come from 479 to be able to do the longer term.
Right. Yep. Mayor Hall, do you want to speak? Do you know anything about this, Mayor Hall?
A little bit
A little
familiar.
bit.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to bring up a couple of things to add to this. But I really appreciate your presentation. I thought it was very well done. And you hit on some things that aren't well known about that area, like the Luke Oxfield is right in the middle there. And for east-west, but it's a very important Oxfield for Luke. So, and then the BNSF intermodal that's planned for North Surprise and the truck traffic, they're estimating, to me, they tell me this, about 1,500 to 2,000 trucks a day that will be part of that intermodal. And it's hard to imagine, but that's what their plan is. But I wanted to point out too to the Transportation Committee that we had City of Surprise, we issued a bond, the voters approved a bond, and for 100 million, and 66 million of that was dedicated to transportation. So we are improving 163rd for 3 lanes both ways from Grand to Jomax. And we're also taking Happy Valley Road, which is right now 1 lane both ways, to 2 lanes both ways. That's going to be part of the bond expense. So anyway, and then the other thing is we've submitted for a RAISE grant. Does anybody know what RAISE stands for? Because I happen to know. It stands for Rebuilding American Infrastructure with Sustainability and Equity. So there you go. All these acronyms, But anyway, we've applied for a RAISE grant, and Senator Kelly has supported it, and so has Senator Sinema, for I think it's $5 million for the design of 303 Litchfield. Now, that isn't written in stone, like you said. It's somewhere along 303 there is where where it needs to be. Litchfield might not be the answer specifically, but somewhere in that 4 mile area between Grand and El Mirage, there needs to be another exit for people to get out. Because right now, like you said, like you pointed out, 163rd is the only way to get out. And it's going to get worse. I mean, it's just going to get busier and busier and busier. There's over 20,000 lots that are entitled in that area. Okay. And it's just, and really the market, I mean, the market slowed a little bit, but it hasn't slowed that much. We're still selling a lot of houses in Surprise, even with the interest rates the way they are. Builders are buying down rates, et cetera. And people are moving. They're still moving to Arizona for one, and then they find Surprise. And we are affordable, quote unquote, compared to other cities, and in the north area. So we get a lot, the TSMC, when they come in and get fully operational, it's going to put a lot of pressure on residential and Surprise. It's only 20 minutes to TSMC from Surprise. So, and then with the BNSF going in out north, that's also going to put pressure on housing out there. So we've got the lots, they're paper lots, they're entitled. So builders are going to be coming and building there for many years. And so I think now is we have got to get ahead of this, you guys, really. And I really appreciate you focusing on the Northwest Valley, because we have dinners in the West Valley with all the mayors once a month, and they get tired of me talking about this, really. And but it's a real issue, and it's not going to get any better. So I would appreciate any help that MAG, or we are also very involved with the legislators in the area, Frank Carroll, David Livingston. I met with Carbone last week, and I met with two of the other representatives out there. And I didn't meet with Austin Smith. I'm glad I didn't meet with him.
Yes.
But anyway, hopefully he survives. I don't know if he's going to survive. But everybody knows this issue. And really, in hindsight, there's only so much money. So money is always a reality that we have to deal with. But the 303 grand should have been a full interchange from day one, instead of getting off and going to a stoplight. But Interstate 10 and 303 was more important to make a full interchange. It just was. And this was relegated to what we got right now. But we've got to fix that interchange. And if you guys, right now it backs up all the way to Bell Road, that interchange in the afternoons. If you've ever been out to Surprise at that time, and that's a long way. It's 2 miles to Bell Road, and cars back up all the way. The interim solutions, the small solutions at ADOT, and we're very thankful for that, is helpful, but it's just a very short-term solution. It really is. So anyway, I'm really passionate about it. I've been dealing with residents out there for quite some time. They've called me all kinds of names, and they think we're terrible planners, that how could you build houses out here without planning ahead? Well, you can do all the plans you want to, but when there's an economic downturn in the economy and we lose a lot of money, we have to reprioritize. And there's a lot of, Mesa's growing, Chandler's growing, Gilbert's growing, Peoria's growing, Buckeye's growing, Goodyear's growing. So, it's the whole area. What are we? The 4th largest city in the country right now? We're at least the 5th. We're approaching the 4th, or Maricopa County is, and city of Phoenix has been, you know, I just counted, there's 5 cranes. When I was coming down Central Avenue, I counted 5 cranes. I mean, who else has got 5 cranes working in their downtown except maybe Denver? Maybe. But anyway, so my point is, we understand, and I've tried to convey that to the residents, that all of Maricopa County is growing and it has to be prioritized. But now it's reached the point where Surprise has gotta come up the priority list, in my opinion. You know, it's just, it's with everything else that's going on in North Surprise with TSMC, BNSF and Surprise, all the rest of it, it's just, it's, we got to fix it. And we can't wait. We can't wait till 2035 or whatever it is. It's just not, it's too crazy. Know what I'm saying, Eric?
Yep.
You know,
Yep. Just to drive a point home, when you're talking about that backup on the 303
yes,
from Bell Road, I'm to Bell Road. That's on Main Line 303,
yes.
waiting to get off and make
Waiting to
one
get off at Grant.
turn movement at Grant.
Right.
Yeah.
It's really, and then all the truck traffic. I mean, you know, I mean, Goodyear and you too, and Buckeye, Eric, Goodyear and especially Goodyear, but Glendale and Goodyear have done a great job of developing industrial parks. But all those parks require trucks to move goods. And guess what? A lot of them come through Surprise. We have got a truck issue in Surprise. In fact, we had to come up with a plan to accommodate trucks in the, to park in the industrial park. And because they were parking on main streets, they're parking on Peoria, they're parking on Cactus, they were parking on Cerebral, you know, 70 to 80 trucks a night were parking off the street in Surprise. They're just, you know, they're truckers. They're great guys. Thank God they're driving trucks. We love them. But the parking issue, my point is that trucks have just become more and more and more of an issue. And with BNSF going in North Surprise, it's going to be even more. And so anyway,
Yep. Appreciate it.
Thank you. thank you
uh,
very much.
Thank you, Mayor Hall. Any other comments? Councilmember Stipp.
I don't remember who alluded to it. I don't know if it was John or the chair, but we talked about this. Is there a plan to look at these future areas? Let me just say that. 'Cause I had an editorial, but I'm going to leave it.
Mr. Chairman, Councilmember Stipp, certainly as part of the studies that Brad had outlined, we do look at it from time to time. We'll do sub-area studies, corridor studies. So it's really dependent on the exact area of town. I think this presentation really illustrates, if you go back to Brad's dot maps, the growth that has occurred so recently. So if you go back even 3-4 years, the transportation infrastructure was there to handle the problem, but the growth is occurring so rapidly, we need to get ahead. So certainly we've been in the Southwest Valley, a lot of the solution. We know what the solution is, as I had mentioned, a State Route 30. Southeast Valley, we work closely for State Route 24. We do partner with member agencies, as Ed had mentioned. If you do see future growth coming, you do need assistance from a regional level in planning some of these. That's certainly a role that MAG can and has and will continue.
So I'm trying not to be frustrated by that, because I share the mayor's frustration with the length of time.
Mhm.
I think if you spent any amount of time in the 303 Grand 60 area, even as many as 5 years ago or 6 years ago, there was no question in your mind that this area was going to have this problem. And that was long before any of that major growth occurred. The backup onto the 303 was already occurring almost immediately upon its completion. And what I'm sensing from some of this is we wait until, and it was said during the presentation, we heard from plenty of well, we shouldn't wait until the residents are so upset that they're inundating us. That's the whole point of planning, at least I think. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, where else in the valley is this going to happen, or is it already happening? And I'm thinking about Queen Creek. I'm thinking, I certainly know about what's going on in Buckeye and what's going on in our own city, but I'm thinking elsewhere in the region. TSMC is going to be, that whole region is going to be hit, and we're already ahead of many of the planning for TSMC, but the rail yard and some of these other things are creating what I think we know today are going to be problems. Let's not pretend that they're not going to happen. Maybe we just identify what they are, get them to this, at least get them, let us know that they're on your radar so that we can, when approached in our community, either by our council members or by the public, we can at least assure somebody that it's even on the radar, because I think that's the greatest frustration with this whole process, which then leads me to, if we know that the amount of truck traffic is going to come from that facility, how prepared are we for what are the needs of the 303 going to be? Because those trucks are going to go from there straight down the 303 to 10. And we already know that that's a problem, but the 303 itself, for it to go north, for it to go south, are we preparing for that? Or are we just going to wait and see how many trucks it actually is going to bring?
Mr. Chair.
And I'm
Sure.
I'm really not argumentative about it. I think we have, this is a transportation policy committee. We're supposed to be looking at the bigger picture.
Yeah.
I'm not worried about my community as much as I am worried about the region, because sooner or later people are going to say, I don't want to live there. We can't get around. Sure.
Mr. Chairman, members of the TPC, I think if we sort of take a step back and look at place and time. So in terms of getting out of growth, this region has done a tremendous job of getting out in front of growth. If you look at the 2003 RTP, the original Prop 400 plan, you look at this area in particular, we had funding for full interchange. Loop 303, we had funding to complete, fully complete Loop 303. The challenge we're facing, or we've particularly faced over the last couple of years, is we're still feeling the lingering impacts of the Great Recession. We lost over a decade worth of revenues that has caused us to have to reprioritize, reassess projects. And we're catching up to some of that. We're seeing some of the congestion catch up. And we just simply don't have the funding to be able to put out a $200, $300, $400 million ultimate interchange solution without a new funding stream, and that new funding stream is Prop 479. In terms of truck traffic, future travel patterns, planning, that's exactly what we do on a regular basis, an ongoing basis. A lot of our sophisticated modeling, a lot of our sophisticated planning effort takes that into consideration. While we take the annual freeway program update, it somewhat feels administrative. Behind the scenes, there's a lot of that analysis that goes on. There's a lot of that care consideration. I think the best example is you look back a couple of years ago, 303 I-17, there was nothing there, absolutely nothing there. When the initial announcement of TSMC and the job creator that is, and the traffic creator that is, the dedicated half-cent sales tax, the infrastructure that we have, the planning process that we had, allowed us to accelerate and advance construction of the two TIs. As I was telling somebody the other day, if you look at all the construction activity up in the Northwest Valley, the two TIs were finished before anything else. And that's a testament to both the dedicated half-cent sales tax as well as the planning and programming process. So certainly that is something that we continue to track. I think the fact of the matter is we are the fastest growing county in the United States. And really the challenge we have is some of our infrastructure is now 30, 40 years old. And so not only do we need to continue to build infrastructure to keep up with the growth, but we have to continue to modernize and rehabilitate our existing infrastructure. So it will be a challenge. That's the challenge that you all faced when developing the plan, and that will be a continuing challenge in the years to come.
Supervisor Sellers.
Yeah, and I think you just already said it, but I just want to remind everybody that it isn't MAG staff that sets priorities on what we do, and with the monies we have available. It's those of us that serve on these committees. And also the kind of things we're talking about today is the reason a number of us have advocated that we need to have flexibility in this plan. And the legislative process we go through to get them to allow us to send this out to our voters limits the amount of flexibility we can have in the plan. But the way things are changing and in technology and the way growth patterns are changing, flexibility is really a key. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Any other comments?
I would just,
Mary?
I'd go.
Congratulations, Mayor Hall, for all the success and forward motion in this area. Really exciting progress. It'll be nice for you to be able to tell those constituents we have a plan. I think it's fabulous. We're going to be doing these regional updates, which are very helpful and will help us all articulate what is in the plan. As we do them going forward, would it be possible to talk about some of the ways we'll use, we have different pots of money like advanced signals and for truck parking. And I think it would just be help us to give real life examples of how some of those pots will be used in these court that will enable us to be more effective spokespeople. And my sense is there's several pots of money that will help just the challenges Mayor Hall is working on, but it's sometimes good to remind ourselves that technology can be part of this in addition to the infrastructure upgrades. And then I was wondering when we were talking about the rail challenges, if a CRISI grant, which are the rail safety grants, might be a match for this area as well. We got one in Phoenix to help with some grade separation and safety issues that was on the agenda earlier today. And it seems like it might be perfect. That is a rough backup that you have to deal with there.
Right. Yeah, because it is becoming a public safety issue. And, you know what it costs to build a fire station and what it costs to staff them. But we got a brand new fire station out there, but it's tough for them to respond in a mutual aid situation, getting out of 163rd onto Grant. It's just, it's just tough. And so, when you have a stroke or a heart attack, minutes mean a lot.
Yeah.
And so that's the other part of the issue is public safety, just like you're saying, Mayor. Yeah.
Yeah, I wanted to, two things to what Mr. Stipp said, and also it relates to what Mayor Hall is. Thank you for previewing the next couple of months, because we are going to see next month what Mesa Queen Creek are dealing with the 24 and the pressures there. Queen Creek, of course, has the other thing is the Pinal County line limits where we can spend the money. But I think you brought up another point, Councilmember Stipp, as the Transportation Policy Committee, and I'll be a broken record on this. This illustrates the limitations of relying on sales tax funding for your transportation. And we rightly so focus on 400 and 479 because that's the purview of this committee and that's the purview of local government. There's another level of government above you, though, that has another funding source that has to be addressed for this. If you think about the growth that's happened here, the way the HURF, Highway User Revenue Funds, the gas tax was structured, it was that growth in transportation should have naturally raised the amount of funding coming from HURF, except that it was never adjusted for inflation and cars and trucks have gotten more efficient, which we're all grateful for. But as the availability for you and your cities to deal with your arterial programs has been diminished, the ability of ADOT to deal with the state freeway system has been diminished because we don't have a modernized way to raise transportation taxes on a statewide level, which is where a lot of this sort of funding would be coming from in another state. So don't beat yourselves up too bad because you're doing as much or more than you should be expected to do by pushing through this local sales tax, which is critical. But that other level of funding for transportation has to be addressed at some point by people who aren't sitting at this table because that's not your purview. You don't have any authority over that sort of funding, but it's going to have to be addressed because the ever diminishing amount of HURF, you're feeling it here, you're feeling it on 24, you're feeling it on I-10, we're all feeling it. And that's for another level of transportation policy, but we should always remind ourselves that There's another group that has to do their part as well, and we have to continue that conversation. But for now, what we know is what you control, 479, does address this. And so we'll continue to bring this forward. So you all have the information to tell your constituents, here's what we're doing, what we have control over, because it's really important.
Thank you, Ed. What a fantastic transition to the legislative